No more hypochondra mode. How to turn your sensitivity into real strength. You are totally okay, even as a hypochondrian. But now start. High sensitivity is a phenomenon that is receiving increasing attention as more and more people begin to recognize themselves in this term. But what exactly does it mean to be highly sensitive? It is not an illness or a syndrome, but a personality trait that affects around 15–20% of the population. Highly sensitive people perceive stimuli more intensely and process them more deeply than others. This applies to external influences such as noise, light or smells, as well as interpersonal and emotional impressions. This can be both a great enrichment and a challenge, depending on the circumstances and the way in which those affected have learned to deal with their sensitivity. High sensitivity manifests itself in many ways in everyday life. Highly sensitive people tend to be very receptive to subtle changes in their environment. They often notice things that others miss. The slight vibrations in the mood of a room, the flickering of a light bulb, or the subtle change in another person's facial expression. This sensitivity allows them to build deep emotional and intellectual connections with others and their environment. They often experience the world in a richer and more nuanced way, which promotes their creativity, empathy, and ability to reflect. At the same time, these intense perceptions can also be overwhelming. Highly sensitive people often report feeling exhausted after social interactions or being in busy, noisy environments. The overstimulation often leads them to retreat to recharge their batteries. While many people seek distraction in their free time, highly sensitive people often need peace and quiet and solitude to recover. The increased sensitivity affects not only the physical senses, but also the emotional world of highly sensitive people. They feel emotions more intensely and are often deeply influenced by the feelings of others. A sad film can keep them occupied for hours. An argument with a loved one can be very emotionally stressful. There are positive and negative sides here too. On the one hand, highly sensitive people are often very empathetic and compassionate people who can build deep, meaningful relationships. On the other hand, experiencing the feelings of others intensely can be very emotionally demanding, especially if they have difficulty setting boundaries. High sensitivity is an innate characteristic that becomes apparent in early childhood. Many highly sensitive adults remember being particularly sensitive to loud noises, bright lights or strong smells as children. Perhaps they also had a particularly close relationship with their parents or were shy and reserved in social situations. Their reaction to criticism or conflict was also often more pronounced than in other children, which could lead to misunderstandings. Some children were labeled as oversensitive or felt that they were different from their peers. The causes of high sensitivity are varied and are still being intensively researched. It is suspected that both genetic and neurological factors play a role. The nervous system of highly sensitive people appears to be particularly reactive, which leads to an increased processing of stimuli. In the past, high sensitivity was often seen as a weakness, but there is now a growing understanding that it is a very special type of perception that, if used correctly, can be a source of strength and creativity. An important issue related to high sensitivity is the correct management of this trait. Many highly sensitive people often feel overwhelmed and burned out if they do not take enough time for relaxation and self-care. It is therefore crucial that they learn to recognize their limits and communicate these to the outside world. This can mean consciously taking breaks in social situations, regularly scheduling time for relaxation and reflection, and not putting too much pressure on themselves to always function. In a world that is often designed for speed, efficiency and performance, highly sensitive people often feel like they can't keep up or don't fit the common image of success. But it is precisely their sensitivity that can enable them to make unique and valuable contributions to society and work. They can inspire others to see the world from a different perspective, promote empathy and compassion, and find creative solutions to complex problems. High sensitivity means having a more intense connection to your own inner and outer world. It requires mindfulness and self-care to use this sensitivity as a strength. At the same time, it is a wonderful gift that allows you to feel and appreciate life in all its facets. What is high sensitivity? High sensitivity is a term coined by the American psychologist Dr. Elaine N. Aron in the 1990s. It describes a personality trait in which those affected react particularly intensely to subtle stimuli from their environment. Around 15–20% of people are classified as highly sensitive, which means that they have a more sensitive nervous system and process stimuli, be they external sensory impressions or emotional signals, more deeply and intensely than average. Highly sensitive people, often referred to as HSPs, experience the world around them more intensely and in more detail. This applies to visual and auditory stimuli as well as smells, touches and emotional stimuli. They perceive many small details that other people miss. This sensitivity to the environment can be seen as a kind of superpower, as it offers the opportunity to feel more deeply and experience more intensely. It enables a heightened perception of beauty, harmony and emotional connections, but can also quickly lead to overwhelm if too many stimuli occur at the same time. Dr. Aron describes high sensitivity as a genetic trait that affects the nervous system. This means that the brains of highly sensitive people react more strongly to certain stimuli and also process these stimuli for longer. Neuroscientific studies have shown that areas of the brain responsible for emotional processing are more active in highly sensitive people than in less sensitive people. However, this increased brain activity also means that highly sensitive people can become overwhelmed more quickly, especially in environments that are noisy, chaotic or emotionally intense. An important aspect of high sensitivity is thinking more deeply and extensively about experiences. Highly sensitive people tend to reflect on events for longer and more intensely. While this can be a basis for creative ideas and deep insights, it also makes highly sensitive people more prone to brooding and self-doubt. This intense reflection can lead to valuable insights in a positive context, but to fears and insecurities in a negative environment. High sensitivity often manifests itself in a high receptivity to emotional moods and social dynamics. Highly sensitive people are very empathetic and can often understand the feelings of others better than average. They sense the smallest nuances in body language or tone of voice and react to them intuitively. This empathic ability makes them excellent listeners and helps them build deep interpersonal connections. On the other hand, this strong empathy can also be stressful, especially if they have not learned to set boundaries and protect themselves from emotional carrying. Highly sensitive people often have a strong intuition. They rely heavily on their gut feeling and often unconsciously sense what is going on in a certain situation or how certain events might develop. This intuitive ability allows them to make decisions on a deeper level than purely rational thinking would allow. They can often recognize more subtle patterns and connections that remain hidden to others. Interestingly, high sensitivity is not a purely human phenomenon. Studies have shown that in the animal world, around 15–20% of animals are considered particularly sensitive. These animals display similar behavior to highly sensitive people. They are more cautious, react more strongly to stimuli, and have a keen awareness of changes in their environment. This sensitivity is a survival advantage in the animal world, as these animals are often better at recognizing dangers early and adapting to them. A common misconception about high sensitivity is that it is equated with introversion. While many highly sensitive people are introverted, there are also highly sensitive people who are extroverted. The difference lies in how they respond to stimuli, not how they get their energy. Introverted highly sensitive people often feel drained by social interactions and need a lot of time to themselves to regenerate. Extroverted highly sensitive people, on the other hand, can enjoy social interactions, but still feel more easily overstimulated by external stimuli and also need periods of rest. Another special feature of highly sensitive people is their high emotional intelligence. They are able to not only perceive the emotions of other people, but also to understand them very precisely. This quality enables them to build deeper and more meaningful relationships. At the same time, this can be challenging, as highly sensitive people often resonate with the emotional burdens of those around them and feel them intensely. Overall, high sensitivity means a deeper perception and processing of stimuli, which has both positive and challenging aspects. It is important to understand that high sensitivity is not a weakness or illness, but a variant of human perception that is worth recognizing and appreciating. By learning to recognize their needs and take care of themselves, highly sensitive people can use their sensitivity as a strength that allows them to make their own valuable contribution in an often loud and fast-paced world. The High Sensitivity Scale. The high sensitivity scale is an important tool for determining whether a person is highly sensitive. It was developed by Dr. Elaine N. Aaron, one of the leading researchers in the field of high sensitivity, and is based on years of research. This scale is a questionnaire that examines certain characteristics and behaviors that are typical of highly sensitive people. By answering the questions, people can better understand whether they belong to the group of highly sensitive people and how strong their sensitivity is. The high sensitivity scale consists of a series of questions that cover various aspects of sensitivity. It examines, among other things, how strongly one reacts to external stimuli such as noise, light and smells, how intensely one feels and processes emotions, and how well one is able to perceive subtle changes in the environment. Each question is answered with not at all true, partially true or completely true, and the sum of the points then gives an indication of whether and to what extent someone is highly sensitive. A typical example of a question on the highly sensitive scale might be, are you easily overwhelmed by bright lights, strong smells, or loud noises? Another question might be, are you sensitive to other people's feelings? Even if they don't express their feelings directly, these questions reflect the key characteristics of high sensitivity and help capture sensitivity to different types of stimuli. It is important to stress that the high sensitivity scale is not a diagnostic tool, but a self-assessment questionnaire. It is designed to help people better understand their own sensitivities and to recognize themselves as potentially highly sensitive. There are no right or wrong answers, and the results are not a rigid diagnosis, but an indication of certain tendencies. The purpose of the scale is to create awareness of one's own sensitivity and to help those affected to better understand and accept their needs. The high sensitivity scale is based on the assumption that high sensitivity is experienced in four main dimensions. Deep processing of information. Highly sensitive people tend to process information more deeply and intensely than others. This means that they often think and reflect on experiences for longer rather than simply moving on. This dimension of sensitivity is reflected in their tendency to look at situations and feelings from different angles, seeking deeper meaning. Overstimulation. Highly sensitive people are more prone to overstimulation because they take in and process a greater amount of stimuli. When they experience too much stimuli at once, whether from loud noises, lots of people, or an emotional situation, they quickly feel overwhelmed and need time to recover. This overstimulation can have both physical and emotional effects, leaving those affected feeling exhausted and stressed. Emotional intensity and empathy. Another dimension of high sensitivity is the intense perception of emotions, both one's own and those of others. Highly sensitive people often experience emotions more deeply and intensely and are very empathetic. They easily perceive the feelings of others, even if they are not openly expressed, and have a strong ability to empathize with others. Sensitivity to subtle stimuli. Highly sensitive people often notice things that others miss. They are particularly sensitive to subtle changes in their environment, whether it is a change in the atmosphere of a room, a small gesture, or a slightly changed facial expression. This ability for fine perception allows them to accurately grasp situations and adapt easily to new environments or moods. The high sensitivity scale takes all of these dimensions into account and helps to paint a comprehensive picture of a person's sensitivity. People who score high on several of these dimensions can be classified as highly sensitive. What makes the high sensitivity scale so valuable? It allows people to objectify and contextualize their sensitivity. Many highly sensitive people may have felt different or oversensitive for a long time without understanding exactly why they react so strongly to certain stimuli. The scale gives them a language to describe their experiences and helps them recognize their sensitivity as a normal and valuable part of their personality. Another valuable feature of the high sensitivity scale is that it can serve as a starting point for self-reflection and personal growth. Highly sensitive people can use the scale to identify areas of their lives in which they are particularly sensitive and, based on this, develop strategies to better deal with this sensitivity. For example, they can learn to better protect their boundaries, plan regular breaks in hectic environments, or consciously take time for relaxation and self-care. There is also criticism of the high sensitivity scale, particularly from those who fear that it may lead to an overemphasis on sensitivity as a label. Some experts believe that while high sensitivity is valuable as a trait, it should not be viewed in isolation. It is important that people do not feel reduced to their sensitivity, but rather view it as an aspect of their whole being. Overall, the high sensitivity scale offers a valuable framework for better understanding and accepting sensitivity. It helps people who often perceive their intense feelings as a burden to see their sensitivity as a strength and to better deal with the challenges of everyday life. Highly sensitive people can thus learn to use their sensitivities as a valuable source of insight, empathy and creativity. Differences between high sensitivity and other personality traits. High sensitivity is often confused or equated with other personality traits. particularly introversion, empathy, or neuroticism. Although there is some overlap, high sensitivity is a unique and specific trait that is quite different from these other traits. It is important to understand these differences in order to understand the full scope of high sensitivity and to classify it correctly. A common misconception is to equate high sensitivity with introversion. In fact, many highly sensitive people are introverted, but not all. Studies have shown that about 70% of highly sensitive people are introverted, while the remaining 30% are extroverted. Introversion describes a personality trait in which people draw energy from the inner world and tend to prefer peace and solitude to social activities. High sensitivity, on the other hand, refers to the intensity with which external stimuli are perceived and processed. While introverted highly sensitive people may seek withdrawal to protect themselves from sensory overload, extroverted highly sensitive people can certainly enjoy the company of others, but also quickly feel overstimulated and need recovery periods. The difference is therefore less in the source of energy, inner or outer world, but in the way in which stimuli affect the person. Another trait that is often confused with high sensitivity is empathy. Empathy is the ability to empathize with other people's emotions and perspectives. Highly sensitive people often have high empathy because they are very good at perceiving other people's feelings. Yet not every empath is necessarily highly sensitive. Empathy can be specifically directed at other people's emotional states, while high sensitivity encompasses a broader sensitivity to a variety of stimuli, including physical, sensory, and emotional stimuli. While empathy is a social and emotional skill, high sensitivity affects all of perception and information processing. A highly sensitive person can therefore be particularly empathetic, but also be strongly influenced by sensory stimuli such as noise or light, which is not necessarily the case with an empathetic person. Neuroticism is another personality dimension that is often confused with high sensitivity. People with high neuroticism tend to be more anxious, irritable, and emotionally unstable. They tend to experience negative emotions more intensely and often have difficulty dealing with stress. While highly sensitive people also react strongly to external stimuli and emotions, this is not necessarily associated with negative emotionality or emotional instability. Highly sensitive people can be very balanced and emotionally stable, but still show intense reactions to their environment. The difference is that high sensitivity is not associated with negative emotions or psychological instability per se, but merely represents a deeper perception and processing of stimuli. While neuroticism is often seen as having negative connotations, high sensitivity is neutral and can have both positive and negative aspects, depending on how it is dealt with. Another concept that is often associated with high sensitivity is hypersensitivity. However, there is a key difference. Hypersensitivity can be a short-term reaction to specific circumstances or situations and is often related to an excess of stress or emotional tension. High sensitivity, on the other hand, is an innate and more permanent personality trait that describes the basic way a person perceives and processes stimuli. While hypersensitive reactions often have to do with stress-related overload of the nervous system, high sensitivity is a continuous, more intense way of processing stimuli. High sensitivity can also be confused with sensory processing sensitivity (SPS), a term sometimes used interchangeably. SPS describes the tendency to process sensory information deeply and in detail. High sensitivity is basically a manifestation of this heightened sensory processing. What makes it special, however, is the combination of deep processing and increased receptivity to both positive and negative stimuli. SPS often encompasses a broader range of sensory sensations, while high sensitivity specifically targets the intensified and detailed processing of these sensations. It is also important to differentiate between high sensitivity and giftedness, although there can be overlap. Highly gifted people often have high cognitive performance and creativity. Highly sensitive people are often creative and reflective, but high sensitivity primarily describes the intensity of stimulus processing, while giftedness involves cognitive abilities. Highly sensitive people can be gifted, but this is not necessarily the case, and not all gifted people are highly sensitive. In summary, high sensitivity is a unique trait characterized by heightened receptivity and deeper processing of stimuli. It may overlap with other personality traits, such as introversion, empathy, or neuroticism, but it remains a distinct concept. Understanding these differences is important to appreciate high sensitivity as part of human diversity and not mistakenly confuse it with negative traits. Highly sensitive people benefit from recognizing their sensitivity as a valuable part of their identity and understanding how it stands out from other personality traits. Discovering the gift of high sensitivity. High sensitivity is often seen as a challenge, especially in a world focused on speed, volume, and constant stimuli. For many highly sensitive people, it can be difficult to find their place in this hectic environment. But beyond the challenges, high sensitivity also offers a deep and meaningful gift. When highly sensitive people embrace their unique perception and sensitivity and learn to use it, they can discover deep insights, creativity, and a special connection to the world around them. One of the most significant gifts of high sensitivity is the ability to perceive the world in all its depth and nuance. Highly sensitive people often notice details that others miss. They experience colors more intensely, sense subtle changes in the atmosphere of a room, and pick up emotional vibrations that remain invisible to others. This sensitivity allows them to recognize beauty and harmony in their surroundings, be it in nature, in works of art, or in interpersonal relationships. It is this heightened perception that often inspires them to appreciate and cultivate deep and meaningful moments. This ability to perceive deeply often leads to a strong creativity. Highly sensitive people find in their sensitivity a source of inspiration that allows them to create unique works, be it in art, music, literature, or other creative fields. Because they perceive the world in all its layers and facets, they often manage to express complex ideas and feelings that remain hidden to others. Many highly sensitive people have used their sensitivity to create creative masterpieces that help others see the world from a new perspective. Another gift of high sensitivity is strong empathy. Highly sensitive people can often perceive the feelings and needs of others better than the average person. This empathy allows them to form deep and meaningful connections with other people. They are often excellent listeners, as they not only hear the words, but also sense the emotions and unspoken messages behind the words. This empathic ability can be of great value in many areas of life. Whether in personal relationships, caring for others, or in helping professions such as therapy and counseling. In addition to empathy, high sensitivity is also characterized by a special intuition. Highly sensitive people often have a strong gut feeling and an unconscious ability to recognize connections before they are obvious. They often sense what might happen in a certain situation, or they have an intuitive insight into the motives and feelings of others. This intuitive wisdom can help them make the right decisions in difficult situations and face challenges with a special depth. It enables them to gain a clearer view of complex problems and find creative solutions. Highly sensitive people also have a deep connection to nature. Many of them find comfort and renewal in nature, as they intensely experience the peace, beauty and subtle rhythms of the natural world. This connection to nature can be a source of inner strength and healing. Highly sensitive people often feel particularly inspired by nature and find in it a balance to the overstimulation of modern life. Another important aspect of the gift of high sensitivity is the ability to engage in deep self-reflection. Highly sensitive people often spend a lot of time reflecting on their experiences and feelings. This reflection allows them to gain a deep understanding of themselves and the world around them. They can analyze their inner processes, learn lessons from their experiences, and continually evolve. This ability for self-reflection can lead to a rich inner life and a sense of self-actualization. Of course, being highly sensitive does come with challenges, such as vulnerability to overstimulation and emotional exhaustion. But when highly sensitive people learn to recognize their needs and care for themselves, they can manage these challenges and embrace their sensitivity as a gift. They can find ways to use their sensitivity to live lives of depth, meaning, and fulfillment. Ultimately, the greatest gift of high sensitivity is the ability to experience life in all its intensity. Highly sensitive people have the potential to experience both the depths of suffering and the heights of happiness more deeply than others. When they learn to embrace and value their sensitivity, they can live rich and fulfilling lives marked by a deep connection to the world and the people around them. Understanding sensitivity as strength. In a world that is often focused on performance, assertiveness and speed, sensitivity is often seen as a weakness. Highly sensitive people sometimes feel overwhelmed or maladjusted because they react more intensely to stimuli and need more time to process them. But sensitivity is much more than a burden. It can be an immense strength if you learn to use and acknowledge it correctly. Sensitivity enables people to perceive their surroundings in a deeper and more nuanced way. This sensitivity is particularly invaluable in interpersonal relationships. Sensitive people often notice small nuances in the mood of others, grasp unspoken needs, and can thus develop a particularly empathetic and mindful way of dealing with others. This increased receptivity to social and emotional signals often makes them valued friends, partners, and colleagues. They can have a de-escalating effect in conflict situations and often offer a special depth in their interpersonal relationships. Another strength of sensitivity lies in the ability to reflect deeply. Highly sensitive people often think longer and more intensely about events, conversations, and experiences. This intensive engagement enables them to learn from their experiences and gain deeper insights. While others may only look at the surface of a problem, highly sensitive people often go deeper and discover hidden connections and solutions. This ability to reflect can represent great potential in creative, intellectual, and personal areas. Creativity too. Sensitive people tend to perceive impressions and emotions more intensely and transform them into creative forms of expression. Many artists, Writers and musicians are highly sensitive because they can express their feelings and perceptions in a unique way in their work. This creative strength stems from their ability to delve deep into their inner world and transform complex emotions and experiences into something new and beautiful. In addition to the creative streak, intuition is another strength that is closely linked to sensitivity. Sensitive people often have strong gut feelings and can recognize subtle patterns and connections before they become obvious to others. This intuitive wisdom can be beneficial in many areas of life, be it in decision making, at work or in personal life. Sensitive people often trust their inner impulses and make decisions on a deeper level that is not always accessible through logical thinking alone. An often overlooked strength of sensitivity is adaptability. Although sensitive people can easily become overstimulated, they have the ability to tune into their environment and perceive changes quickly. This adaptability allows them to navigate new or uncertain situations and adjust subtly to the demands of their environment. They are often able to respond to challenges flexibly and resourcefully because they are quicker to recognize the different facets of a situation and adapt accordingly. Compassion and empathy are other key strengths of sensitive people. They are often able to put themselves in the shoes of others and understand their feelings. This empathic ability allows them to build deep connections with other people and be particularly supportive in interpersonal relationships. They can focus on what is important and make others feel truly heard and understood. A particularly important concept related to sensitivity as a strength is understanding that setting boundaries is an important skill. Sensitive people need to learn to recognize and communicate their own boundaries to protect themselves from overstimulation and emotional exhaustion. Setting boundaries is not a weakness, but a sign of self-care and self-awareness. When highly sensitive people respect and pay attention to their own needs, they can use their sensitivity in ways that are beneficial to both themselves and those around them. Finally, sensitivity allows people to experience the beauty and depth of life in ways that are often hidden from others. Highly sensitive people perceive the world more intensely, whether it is the joy of a gentle breeze, the colors of a sunset, or the touch of a loved one. These intense experiences can enrich life and sharpen the sense of what is essential. In an often hectic and superficial world, the ability to feel life in all its depth can be a great gift. So, far from being a weakness, sensitivity, when acknowledged and used correctly, can be a great strength, allowing people to build deeper relationships, develop creative and intuitive skills, and experience life on a profound and meaningful level. Emotional and intuitive intelligence. Emotional and intuitive intelligence are two key concepts closely linked to high sensitivity. They complement each other and play a crucial role in how highly sensitive people experience and interact with the world. These two forms of intelligence enable highly sensitive people to better tune into their environment, gain deeper insights, and make more effective decisions. Emotional intelligence (EI) refers to the ability to perceive, understand and regulate one's own emotions and those of others. Highly sensitive people often have exceptionally high emotional intelligence. They are able to quickly and accurately recognize the feelings of others, even when they are not explicitly expressed. This ability makes them excellent communicators and interpersonal mediators. They can decode emotional signals in social interactions and thus better respond to the needs and moods of others. Emotional intelligence also includes the ability to self-regulate. Highly sensitive people are often very aware of their own emotional states and reflect on their feelings. This ability to reflect helps them to better manage their emotions, even if they are sometimes overwhelmed by the intensity of these emotions. This self-regulation is an essential part of emotional intelligence, as it enables highly sensitive people to remain calm and balanced in challenging situations. Another important aspect of emotional intelligence is compassion. Highly sensitive people often feel a deep compassion for others. They are not only able to recognize others' feelings, but also to put themselves in their shoes and share their experiences. This compassion often leads highly sensitive people to be particularly supportive and caring in social or professional contexts. It allows them to build deeper, more meaningful relationships and to support others during difficult times. In addition to emotional intelligence, intuitive intelligence also plays an important role in the lives of highly sensitive people. Intuition is the ability to process information and make decisions without basing this on conscious, rational considerations. Highly sensitive people often rely on their intuition to make the right decisions or to recognize subtle connections in their environment. Intuition develops through the ability to quickly grasp subtle stimuli and information and act on them. Highly sensitive people have a particularly keen perception of these subtle signals. They can often sense what is going on in a situation before the facts are fully clear. This intuitive intelligence enables them to act in complex or uncertain situations with a clarity that others often lack. An example of intuitive intelligence is the ability to understand a social or emotional dynamic before it is spoken. Highly sensitive people can often sense a change in the mood of a room or a person's unspoken emotions and respond accordingly. This intuitive ability can help them avoid conflict, anticipate problems, or make better decisions in interpersonal relationships. Emotional and intuitive intelligence are two complementary skills that enable highly sensitive people to better adapt to life's challenges. While emotional intelligence helps them understand and regulate the feelings and needs of others, intuitive intelligence enables them to process subtle information and act on a deeper, unconscious level. Together, these two forms of intelligence form the basis for many of the unique strengths of highly sensitive people and help them find their own way in a complex and often chaotic world. The subtle difference. Empathy and compassion. Empathy and compassion are closely related, but they describe different emotional processes. While both concepts concern the ability to respond to other people's feelings, there are key differences in the way these reactions are experienced and expressed. Especially for highly sensitive people who feel a strong emotional connection to others, it is helpful to understand these differences in order to better manage their own emotions and boundaries. Empathy is the ability to put oneself in the shoes of other people's feelings and perspectives. Highly sensitive people are often very empathetic because they respond to subtle emotional signals that others may miss. Empathy allows them to feel and understand another person's emotional world. When someone is suffering, they often feel that person's pain almost as intensely as if it were their own. This emotional mirroring can be very valuable, especially in interpersonal relationships, as it promotes understanding and support. An example of empathy is when a highly sensitive person recognizes in a conversation that someone is sad or anxious, even though that person may not express it openly. The empathic person picks up on the subtle signs, such as a hushed tone of voice or a change in posture, and senses the underlying emotion. This deep emotional resonance can cause the empathic person to almost physically feel the other person's suffering. This is a powerful connection based on deep emotional exchange. Compassion, on the other hand, is the ability to respond to the suffering of others with concern, care, and a desire to help. It is not only about understanding the feelings of others, but also about adopting a helping attitude without being completely drawn into those feelings. While empathy often means experiencing the other person's feelings intensely, compassion creates a certain distance. This distance allows a person to act in a supportive way without being overwhelmed by the emotions. An example of compassion is when a highly sensitive person notices that someone is suffering and then decides to actively help, whether by listening, having a supportive conversation, or providing practical help. Compassion means caring about the other person's well-being, but not falling into their pain. This is especially important for staying emotionally healthy, as people who become too immersed in the suffering of others run the risk of becoming emotionally drained or overwhelmed themselves. So the subtle difference between empathy and compassion lies in emotional distance. Empathy can draw us so deeply into the emotions of others that it becomes difficult to maintain a clear boundary. Highly sensitive people are particularly vulnerable to this type of emotional exhaustion because they perceive the suffering of others so intensely. Empathy can help them feel connected and understand others, but it can also become a burden if they don't learn to set emotional boundaries. Compassion, on the other hand, allows highly sensitive people to use their empathic abilities to help in ways that are healthier for themselves. They can care about the well-being of others without being overwhelmed by their emotions. This balance allows them to be more helpful and supportive in the long run, as they don't exhaust themselves as easily. It is important for highly sensitive people to recognize this distinction and actively practice cultivating compassion as a complement to empathy. By learning to set their own emotional boundaries, they can prevent themselves from being overwhelmed by other people's emotions. This means that while they continue to be deeply connected to others, they do so in a way that allows them to maintain their own emotional stability. One way to achieve this balance is to be more mindful of your own feelings and reactions. Highly sensitive people can learn to perceive and protect their emotional boundaries more clearly through mindfulness exercises or meditation. By regularly pausing and reflecting on their own needs, they can better protect themselves from emotional overload while maintaining and strengthening their ability to help others. Overall, both empathy and compassion offer valuable tools for highly sensitive people. By understanding how these two processes work and how they differ from each other, highly sensitive people can deepen their relationships without compromising their own emotional health. With this understanding, they can purposefully use their empathic skills to help others in ways that are sustainable and fulfilling for both themselves and those around them. Overcoming everyday challenges. Highly sensitive people often face particular challenges in everyday life. Their heightened perception and deep processing of stimuli, which can normally be seen as a strength, can become a burden in everyday life. Especially in a fast-paced, noisy and often overwhelming world, it can be difficult for highly sensitive people to face the demands without feeling exhausted or overwhelmed. One of the biggest challenges for highly sensitive people is sensory overload. They perceive stimuli more intensely than others and process them on a deeper level. This can be problematic in a variety of everyday situations. Hectic environments such as shopping centers, large crowds, traffic noise or even hectic work life can quickly lead to overwhelm. Highly sensitive people often report feeling stressed, restless or even irritable in such situations. Their ability to process all of these stimuli means that their nervous system becomes overloaded more quickly. Another aspect of everyday challenges concerns social interactions. While highly sensitive people generally value deep and meaningful relationships, superficial or compulsive social situations can be particularly stressful for them. Small talk or professional networking meetings can quickly become tiring because these interactions are often less fulfilling for highly sensitive people, and they are also particularly receptive to the moods and emotions of their conversation partners. This can mean that they need a longer time to recover from such situations than other people. Everyday work often presents highly sensitive people with particular challenges. Many jobs require multitasking, quick decision making, and dealing with high expectations, factors that can quickly lead to overload in highly sensitive people. They often feel uncomfortable in highly competitive work environments because they have to contend not only with their own tasks but also with the energies and expectations of their colleagues. Many highly sensitive people find constant interruptions, noise, or the feeling of being under time pressure particularly stressful. Emotional challenges are another area that often plays a role in the everyday lives of highly sensitive people. They react more intensely to emotional stimuli, be it joy, sadness, or anger. This emotional sensitivity can lead to them feeling more quickly affected by conflicts or negative events, especially when dealing with criticism or conflicts. Highly sensitive people can take longer to recover because they analyze the situation more deeply and process it emotionally. However, there are strategies that highly sensitive people can use to better deal with these challenges in everyday life. One of the most important strategies is self-care. Highly sensitive people must learn to take care of themselves and take their own needs seriously. This includes regularly taking time for rest and retreat to calm the nervous system and recover from sensory overload. Another key to coping with daily challenges is setting boundaries. Highly sensitive people need to become aware of their own boundaries and learn to communicate them clearly to the outside world. This means that they should not be afraid to say no when they feel overwhelmed and consciously give themselves breaks when they notice that their energy levels are dropping. Mindfulness techniques can also help you cope better with everyday life. Mindfulness enables highly sensitive people to stay in the moment and not be overwhelmed by the many stimuli around them. Through regular meditation or other mindfulness-based practices, they can learn to better control their reactions to stimuli and recover more quickly. Overall, coping with everyday challenges for highly sensitive people is about being aware of their sensitivity and taking active steps to deal with the stimuli and demands. Through self-care, setting boundaries, and mindfulness, they can learn to overcome daily challenges while using their sensitivity as a strength. Overstimulation and its consequences. Overstimulation is one of the biggest problems that highly sensitive people face in everyday life. It occurs when the nervous system is flooded with too many stimuli and can no longer process them effectively. For highly sensitive people, whose nervous system is particularly sensitive to external and internal stimuli, this can quickly lead to a state of being overwhelmed. Overstimulation can have both physical and emotional consequences that significantly impair well-being. One of the most common physical consequences of overstimulation is exhaustion. When highly sensitive people are constantly exposed to a variety of stimuli, whether from noise, bright lights, crowds, or emotional tension, their bodies often react with extreme fatigue. The nervous system, which is constantly busy processing stimuli, can become overloaded, leading to physical and mental exhaustion. In some cases, highly sensitive people also report headaches, muscle tension, or digestive problems as a result of overstimulation. Emotional consequences of overstimulation are also common. Highly sensitive people can become irritable, anxious, or sad when they feel overwhelmed, because they react more deeply to stimuli. Even seemingly small events can trigger strong emotional reactions. A loud noise or a stressful social situation, for example, can lead to a feeling of inner restlessness or being overwhelmed that can last for hours or even days. Another consequence of overstimulation is social withdrawal. Highly sensitive people often withdraw from social situations when they feel overwhelmed. This can be problematic because withdrawal can sometimes also lead to loneliness, especially when highly sensitive people feel the need to isolate themselves in order to recover. However, this withdrawal is often necessary to calm the nervous system and recenter. Long-term consequences of chronic overstimulation can be serious. Highly sensitive people who are regularly overstimulated and do not use adequate self-care strategies are at risk of suffering from chronic stress or burnout. The constant overload of the nervous system can weaken the immune system and negatively affect overall health. Chronic stress can also affect emotional stability and lead to problems such as anxiety or depression. However, there are ways to counteract the effects of overstimulation. One of the most effective methods is to consciously take breaks and allow yourself regular periods of rest. Highly sensitive people should be aware of when they are overstimulated and then take steps to withdraw and recover. These breaks can help calm the nervous system and prevent overstimulation before it leads to bigger problems. Mindfulness and relaxation techniques such as meditation, yoga, or breathing exercises can also help to mitigate the effects of overstimulation. These techniques help to calm the nervous system, focus perception, and reduce stress. By regularly using such techniques, highly sensitive people can better deal with the stimuli of everyday life and reduce the negative consequences of overstimulation. Overall, overstimulation is one of the biggest challenges for highly sensitive people, but with the right strategies, its consequences can be mitigated. By learning to respect their boundaries and actively taking care of their well-being, highly sensitive people can counteract the effects of overstimulation and live a balanced, fulfilling life. Dealing with stress and sensory overload. Stress and overstimulation are often part of everyday life for highly sensitive people, because they react more intensely to external stimuli and process them more deeply. Even an ordinary situation can quickly become a stressful experience. The key for highly sensitive people is to develop effective strategies to deal with these challenges and protect themselves from the negative consequences of stress and overstimulation. One of the first steps in managing stress is to recognize your own stress triggers. Highly sensitive people react particularly strongly to certain stimuli that may be barely noticeable to others. These can be noise, bright lights, chaotic environments, or emotional tension. By identifying their personal stress triggers, highly sensitive people can take targeted steps to minimize or avoid these stimuli. This might mean learning to plan situations in advance to avoid stress triggers. For example, they might avoid busy places like shopping malls during peak times, or take regular breaks in social situations to relieve their nervous system. This forward planning helps them stay in control of their environment and reduce the likelihood of stress and sensory overload. Another important approach to dealing with stress and sensory overload is mindfulness. Mindfulness techniques help highly sensitive people to focus on the present moment instead of being overwhelmed by external stimuli or internal thoughts. Regular meditation, breathing exercises, or simple mindfulness practices such as being aware of your own breathing can help calm the mind and reduce the stress response. These techniques train the brain to react less to external stimuli and to remain more in a state of inner calm. In addition, self-care is a crucial factor in dealing with stress and sensory overload. Highly sensitive people need to take time to relax and recharge regularly. This can mean consciously taking time for yourself after a long day at work, whether it's reading, going for a walk, listening to music, or other relaxing activities. It's important that highly sensitive people prioritize their own needs and don't feel guilty about taking time for rest and regeneration. A particularly valuable tool in dealing with stress is the ability to set boundaries. Highly sensitive people need to learn to say no when they feel overwhelmed. This applies to both their professional and private lives. It is important that they know their own capacities and are not afraid to communicate their limits clearly. If they notice that they are taking on too much responsibility or getting lost in too many social obligations, it is perfectly fine to withdraw and take breaks. By respecting their boundaries, they can protect themselves from overload and deal with stress better in the long term. Another effective strategy is active stress management through physical exercise. Highly sensitive people often benefit from physical activities such as yoga, swimming, running, or walks in nature. These activities help to reduce stress hormones while calming the nervous system. Activities in nature in particular have a healing effect on the nervous system, as they offer a retreat from the overstimulation of everyday life while promoting physical and mental recovery. In addition to exercise, social support can also play an important role. Highly sensitive people should make sure to maintain a supportive network of friends and family who understand and respect their sensitivity. Sharing experiences and openly discussing stress factors can be a relief and reduce the pressure they often feel. It can be helpful to get in touch with other highly sensitive people to exchange experiences and give each other tips on how to deal with stress and sensory overload. Another aspect that highly sensitive people should consider when dealing with stress and sensory overload is environmental adjustment. This means designing their home and work environments to take their sensitivity into account. This might mean taking care to create a calm and orderly environment that is free of unnecessary stimuli. They might also make small adjustments such as using soft lighting, minimizing noise by wearing earplugs, or setting up a special room or area to serve as a retreat when they need a break from external stimuli. Patient with themselves when dealing with stress and sensory overload. It is normal to feel overwhelmed at times, but with time and proper care of their emotional and physical health, they can learn to better deal with these challenges. Highly sensitive people should realize that their sensitivity is not a weakness, but a valuable aspect of their personality. By acknowledging their sensitivity and being mindful of it, they can shape their lives in a way that is beneficial to both their well-being and their relationships. Overall, dealing with stress and sensory overload is a continuous learning process for highly sensitive people. However, over time and through targeted self-care, they can find ways to make their lives more balanced and fulfilling without constantly being overwhelmed by the challenges of everyday life. Self-care, breaks and retreat as a necessity. For highly sensitive people, Self-care is an essential part of daily life, as their nervous system can quickly become overloaded by constantly processing intense stimuli. Breaks and retreating to quiet, relaxed environments are not just a luxury, but a necessity to maintain inner balance and stay healthy in the long term. Consciously dealing with your own limits and recognizing your own needs are key to dealing with the intense perception and sensory overload that highly sensitive people often experience. Breaks and retreat are not only measures for recovery, but also preventive strategies to avoid overload. Highly sensitive people are particularly receptive to the stimuli in their environment, be it noise, light, smells or emotional tension. These stimuli are processed more intensively and without regular breaks. This can lead to exhaustion, stress and sensory overload. Breaks allow the nervous system to calm down and regenerate, so that highly sensitive people are able to concentrate on their surroundings and their tasks again. One of the most important aspects of self-care for highly sensitive people is recognizing their own boundaries. Often, highly sensitive people feel like they have to keep up with the world around them, even though deep down they feel they need a break. It's important that they learn to listen to these inner signals and take timely action to protect themselves. This means allowing themselves to take regular breaks without feeling guilty. These breaks can be as simple as taking a short walk, meditating, or consciously taking a break from social interactions. Creating retreats is also a key part of self-care. Highly sensitive people need places where they feel safe and secure. Places that are free from excessive stimuli and allow them to relax and recharge. This can be a quiet room at home, a favorite spot in nature, or even a simple moment of solitude where they can shield themselves from outside influences. These retreats are sacred spaces of rest and renewal that allow highly sensitive people to replenish their energy. Emotional retreat is also an important aspect of self-care. Highly sensitive people are often strongly connected to the feelings of others and feel the emotional energy of those around them intensely. This can lead them to absorb the emotions of others and feel overwhelmed by them. Emotional retreat means distancing yourself from these influences and focusing on your own feelings and needs. It's about giving yourself space to process your own emotions without being influenced by external expectations or demands. Regular self-care routines are essential for highly sensitive people to promote their well-being. These routines can include activities that promote relaxation, joy and mindfulness. These include daily meditation, physical exercise, being creative, spending time in nature or reading a good book. Regular self-care rituals help keep the nervous system in balance and better cope with daily challenges. It is important to emphasize that self-care is not a selfish act, but an act of self-preservation and self-respect. Highly sensitive people need to realize that they do not always have to function to be valuable. By taking time to care for themselves, they are able to be more productive and present in their relationships and professional lives in the long run. For highly sensitive people, who are often faced with the expectations and demands of those around them, it can be difficult to justify the need for breaks and retreat. But the more they learn to take care of themselves and incorporate these practices into their daily lives, the more balanced and fulfilled they can live. Self-care is not only a way of dealing with the world, but also a way to fully develop one's potential as a highly sensitive person. Shaping relationships as a highly sensitive person. For highly sensitive people, interpersonal relationships can be both fulfilling and challenging. Their ability to form deep emotional connections is one of their greatest strengths. At the same time, however, relationships can also be particularly stressful for them, as they are intensely aware of the emotions and needs of others and often feel like they have to constantly look after the well-being of those around them. The key for highly sensitive people is to maintain healthy and balanced relationships that meet both their own needs and those of their partners and friends. One of the biggest challenges for highly sensitive people in relationships is setting boundaries. Because they are often very empathetic and strongly empathize with the emotions of others, they find it difficult to say no or to withdraw when they feel overwhelmed. They run the risk of neglecting themselves in order to meet the needs of their partners or friends. This can lead to exhaustion and emotional overload. It is therefore crucial that highly sensitive people learn to recognize their own boundaries and communicate them clearly and lovingly. This is the only way they can prevent themselves from becoming overwhelmed in their relationships. Another important element in shaping relationships is awareness of one's own needs. Highly sensitive people need more rest and time for themselves than many others. This can sometimes lead to misunderstandings in relationships, especially if their partner or friends are more extroverted or less sensitive. It is important that highly sensitive people are open about their needs for rest and retreat and explain why these breaks are necessary. If they do this, misunderstandings can be avoided and their partners will better understand and respect their needs. Deep conversations are another key to relationship success for highly sensitive people. They often find superficial conversations or small talk tiring or uninteresting. Instead, they value deep, meaningful conversations that allow them to build a real connection with those around them. This type of communication can help highly sensitive people feel fulfilled and understood in their relationships. However, it is also important that they learn to find the balance between deep conversations and light, everyday interactions to conserve their energy. Emotional openness is also a key aspect of relationship building. Highly sensitive people often feel most comfortable in relationships where they can freely express their feelings. They need partners and friends who are willing to listen and show understanding for their emotions. At the same time, highly sensitive people need to be careful to protect their own emotional boundaries and not let themselves be overwhelmed by the feelings of others. A healthy balance between emotional openness and self-protection is the key to successful and fulfilling relationships. Finally, highly sensitive people should seek partner support in their relationships. They benefit from partners and friends who support and respect their sensitivity. This means that they should consciously choose people who understand their needs and do not push them to do more than they can handle. In such supportive relationships, highly sensitive people can flourish and experience their sensitivity as a strength that benefits both themselves and those around them. Building deep connections. Highly sensitive people crave deep, meaningful connections in their interpersonal relationships. They often find superficial interactions unsatisfying or tiring because they have a natural tendency to grasp the emotional depth and true core of a person or situation. This ability to form deep connections is one of highly sensitive people's greatest strengths, but it can also be challenging because not all people are willing or able to reach this depth. The key to building deep connections lies in authenticity. Highly sensitive people tend to prefer authentic relationships where they can be themselves without having to pretend. They are attracted to people who are open, honest, and willing to share their true feelings and thoughts. This authenticity allows them to build a real emotional connection with those around them that goes beyond the mere surface. Highly sensitive people are often uncomfortable in relationships characterized by superficial conversations or societal expectations. They seek connections characterized by mutual understanding, trust, and emotional depth. This requires that both parties are willing to be open and vulnerable, traits that come naturally to many highly sensitive people, but can be challenging for others. Another prerequisite for building deep connections is active listening. Highly sensitive people often have a natural gift for listening well and understanding the needs and emotions of others. This ability enables them to understand those around them on a deeper level and to create a special closeness. By giving their conversation partner their full attention and also paying attention to non-verbal signals, they can create an atmosphere of trust and connection. But deep connections are not only created by listening, they also require mutual openness. Highly sensitive people must learn not only to respond to the emotions of others, but also to openly share their own thoughts and feelings. This emotional openness is key to authentic connections, as it allows both sides to fully show themselves and be seen. By having the courage to share their inner worlds, highly sensitive people create space for deeper relationships in which true closeness can develop. Shared interests and values are also an essential part of deep connections. Highly sensitive people are often attracted to people who share their values and beliefs. These shared values provide a solid foundation for a relationship based on trust and mutual respect, especially in romantic relationships or close friendships. Highly sensitive people look for partners who share their views and interests, as this contributes to a deeper connection. Patience and time are two other important factors in building deep connections. Highly sensitive people tend to take their time to develop and deepen a relationship. They want to make sure the relationship is based on solid foundations and develops organically. They often find superficial or rushed connections unsatisfying. Instead, they prefer relationships that unfold slowly and carefully, focusing on cultivating trust and emotional depth. Another aspect of building deep connections is emotional intelligence, which highly sensitive people often possess to a high degree. Their ability to understand and respond to the feelings of others allows them to resolve conflicts in a gentle and compassionate way. This emotional intelligence helps highly sensitive people build deeper connections with those around them, as they are able to bring empathy and compassion to their relationships. This creates an atmosphere where both parties feel that their emotional needs are understood and respected. However, it's also important that highly sensitive people learn to set their own emotional boundaries while building deep connections. Because of their strong empathy and desire for closeness, they can sometimes get too caught up in the emotions of those around them and feel emotionally overloaded. By setting clear boundaries and making sure their own needs aren't neglected, highly sensitive people can maintain healthy, deep connections without losing themselves in the process. Finally, shared experiences can play an important role in building deep connections. Highly sensitive people often enjoy sharing meaningful experiences with others, whether through conversations about personal topics, shared creative projects, or experiences in nature. These shared activities not only create beautiful memories, but also deepen the emotional bond that highly sensitive people build with those around them. Overall, deep connections are an essential part of a fulfilling life for highly sensitive people. These connections provide them with the emotional depth and understanding they crave and allow them to experience their sensitivity as a strength in their relationships. Through authenticity, active listening, mutual openness, and setting healthy boundaries, highly sensitive people can build meaningful, deep connections that enrich both themselves and those around them. High sensitivity in romantic relationships. High sensitivity in romantic relationships can be both deeply enriching and challenging. Highly sensitive people bring heightened emotional sensitivity and empathy to their partnerships, often resulting in an intense and deep connection. They are able to perceive their partner's needs and feelings in ways that others may miss. Yet these intense emotional connections can also lead to overwhelming misunderstandings when the needs of both partners are not in balance. A major advantage of highly sensitive people in romantic relationships is their strong emotional connection. Highly sensitive partners often sense subtle emotional changes in their counterparts and are able to intuitively respond to each other's needs. This can lead to a deep sense of closeness and understanding. Because highly sensitive people value intense emotional experiences, they often have a desire to develop a deep emotional and spiritual bond with their partner. This type of connection can lead to a fulfilling partnership characterized by mutual respect, care, and emotional intimacy. However, this intensity can also be problematic if not lived in the right measure. Emotional overstimulation is a common challenge in romantic relationships for highly sensitive people. Because they react strongly to their partner's feelings, they can sometimes feel like they are emotionally flooded. This can happen if they spend too much time processing their partner's emotions without taking enough time for their own needs. In such moments, the desire to withdraw can arise, which is often misunderstood by non-highly sensitive partners as rejection or distancing. That's why it's important for highly sensitive people to maintain open communication in their relationship. They should clearly communicate to their partner when they need a break or some space for themselves to emotionally regenerate. These breaks are not signs of a lack of affection, but rather necessary self-care. If both partners understand this need for retreat and recovery, they can shape their relationship in a way that suits both of them. Another challenge in romantic relationships is the pursuit of harmony. Highly sensitive people often have a strong aversion to conflict and tension. They strive to maintain harmony and peace in their relationship, which may lead them to suppress their own needs or opinions to avoid arguments. However, this can lead to frustration and a feeling of exhaustion in the long term, as they may feel like they are giving up on themselves for the sake of the relationship. Here it is important that highly sensitive people learn to set their boundaries and clearly express their own needs, even if this could lead to conflict. Open and honest communication is essential to ensure that both partners see their needs and desires met in the relationship. Dealing with conflicts correctly by addressing them in a respectful and empathetic way can help ensure that the relationship remains not only harmonious, but also authentic and balanced. Another aspect of high sensitivity in romantic relationships is the strong intuition that many highly sensitive people possess. This intuitive ability allows them to often read their partner's moods and needs before they are expressed. This can be a great advantage in the relationship, as they often recognize in advance when their partner needs comfort or support. However, they should also be careful not to rely entirely on this intuition and encourage their partner to communicate their needs directly to avoid misunderstandings. Overall, highly sensitive people can experience a deep, emotionally enriching connection in romantic relationships, marked by empathy and understanding. However, the key to success is finding a balance between meeting your own needs and those of your partner. By learning to talk openly about their feelings, respecting their boundaries, and using their sensitivity as a strength, highly sensitive people can build a fulfilling and sustainable partnership. Setting and maintaining boundaries. Setting and maintaining boundaries is an essential skill for highly sensitive people to protect themselves from overstimulation, emotional exhaustion, and the loss of their own identity. Highly sensitive people tend to be intensely aware of the feelings and needs of others and focus heavily on the well-being of those around them. This can lead them to ignore or neglect their own needs. Setting boundaries is therefore not only important to maintain one's own health and well-being, but also to remain balanced and authentic in interpersonal relationships in the long term. Setting boundaries means being clear with yourself and others about what you need to feel good and stay healthy. For highly sensitive people, this often means consciously withdrawing from stressful or overstimulating situations, taking breaks, or saying no when they feel overwhelmed. These boundaries need to be set in both professional and personal life to avoid burnout and emotional exhaustion. Setting these boundaries can be difficult at first, as highly sensitive people often feel the need to please others and avoid conflict. But in the long term, it is essential that they prioritize themselves and their needs. A first step in setting boundaries is recognizing your own needs. Highly sensitive people should regularly take time to reflect on their feelings and energy levels. They need to learn to recognize the signs of overstimulation and exhaustion before they reach their breaking point. This might mean becoming aware of when they need breaks, which situations are particularly stressful, and which social or work obligations are too much for them. Once these needs are clear, they can begin to formulate and communicate their boundaries externally. Communicating boundaries is often the most difficult part of the process. Highly sensitive people sometimes fear that setting boundaries could lead to conflict or that they might be perceived as uncooperative or rude. Yet clear and loving communication is key to setting boundaries successfully. It is important that highly sensitive people express their needs in a way that respects both their own needs and the feelings of others. For example, they might say, "I realize that I need some quiet time to recharge my energy. I'll be back after a short break." Maintaining boundaries requires both self-discipline and self-compassion. There may be times when others do not immediately respect highly sensitive people's boundaries or encourage them to do more than they can handle. In such cases, it is important for highly sensitive people to stand firm and not be swayed by external expectations or pressure. At the same time, they should be compassionate towards themselves when they find themselves exceeding their own boundaries at times. The process of setting boundaries is a learning process, and it is normal for it to take time to perfect this behavior. Maintaining boundaries also means protecting yourself. Highly sensitive people need to learn to say no when they feel their emotional or physical resources are being depleted. This may mean turning down commitments, changing social plans, or delegating tasks. By respecting and maintaining their boundaries, they can prevent themselves from feeling overwhelmed and burned out. This ultimately strengthens their ability to contribute in healthy ways to their relationships and work lives. Setting and maintaining boundaries is therefore an essential part of self-care and personal well-being for highly sensitive people. It allows them to find their own balance in a world that can often be overwhelming and to use their sensitivity as a strength that benefits both themselves and those around them. Improve interpersonal communication. Interpersonal communication is an important issue for highly sensitive people because they often respond more deeply and intensely to the nonverbal and emotional cues of those around them. Their ability to pay attention to subtle moods and emotions can lead to enriching communication, but it can also bring challenges, especially when misunderstandings arise or they fail to clearly communicate their own needs. However, highly sensitive people can learn to improve their communication skills to communicate more clearly, confidently, and effectively without feeling overwhelmed by the emotional energies of others. A first step to improving interpersonal communication is to be mindful. Being mindful means consciously focusing on the present moment and paying close attention to the communication process. Highly sensitive people often have a natural ability to sense the moods and emotions of those they are communicating with, but this ability can become overwhelming if not channeled properly. By focusing on the here and now and being aware of how they respond to their counterparts' words and nonverbal signals, they can ensure that they are not overwhelmed by others' emotions. Clarity and directness are crucial factors for effective communication. Highly sensitive people often tend to communicate subtly, hoping that others will read their needs between the lines. However, this often leads to misunderstandings or dissatisfaction. Clear, direct communication is especially important to ensure that their needs and boundaries are respected. This means that highly sensitive people must learn to put their thoughts and feelings into words, rather than expecting others to understand them intuitively. Another important aspect of interpersonal communication is active listening. Highly sensitive people are often excellent listeners because they are able to pay attention to the nonverbal and emotional cues of the person they are talking to. But it is important that they learn to listen without becoming completely emotionally involved in the other person's experience. By focusing on listening to understand rather than automatically reacting emotionally, they can conduct conversations in a way that is both empathetic and balanced. Boundaries in communication is also crucial. Highly sensitive people can sometimes feel obligated to listen for longer or offer more support than they can actually provide. It's important that they learn to set clear boundaries in communication as well. This may mean stopping the conversation if they feel it's getting too much, or explaining that they need a break to emotionally compose themselves. Another important step to improving communication is to be open and honest. Highly sensitive people sometimes tend to hold back their own needs or feelings to avoid conflict or keep the peace. But in the long run, this can lead to dissatisfaction or misunderstanding. Honest communication is not only a way to avoid misunderstandings, but also a way to create deeper, authentic connections. Highly sensitive people should feel encouraged to share their true thoughts and feelings, even if it may be uncomfortable at first. Self-awareness in communication is another important point. Highly sensitive people need to learn to stand up for their own needs, even if this means having potentially uncomfortable conversations. This can be supported by self-awareness exercises where they learn to express their own wants and needs clearly and without guilt. Self-awareness in communication also means not being too influenced by the emotional reactions of others, but focusing on your own truth and authenticity. Finally, fostering empathy and compassion in communication can help create deeper and more harmonious interpersonal relationships. Highly sensitive people often have natural empathy, but this needs to be channeled in a way that is healthy for both themselves and those they are communicating with. They should focus on creating a balance between giving and receiving emotional energy so that their communication does not become one-sided or overwhelming. In summary, improving interpersonal communication for highly sensitive people means honing their natural skills while developing new strategies to communicate their needs clearly and effectively. With clarity, mindfulness, and a deep awareness of their own boundaries, highly sensitive people can learn to shape their communication in ways that enrich both themselves and those around them. This type of communication contributes to stronger, healthier, and more harmonious relationships. High sensitivity and professional challenges. Highly sensitive people often face unique challenges in their professional lives. Due to their intense perception and deep processing of stimuli, they react more strongly to environmental factors such as noise, time pressure and emotional tension. This increased sensitivity can lead to overwhelm, stress and exhaustion if they work in an environment that does not take their needs into account. At the same time, highly sensitive people bring valuable strengths to the job, such as creativity, empathy and a strong intuition, which can help them to be successful in their careers if they learn to use their sensitivity wisely. One of the biggest challenges for highly sensitive people in their professional lives is sensory overload. In hectic and noisy work environments characterized by constant multitasking, frequent interruptions and high speed, highly sensitive people quickly feel overwhelmed. Open offices, meetings with many participants or workplaces with intensive social interaction can be particularly stressful for them, as they are constantly exposed to sensory and emotional stimuli. This can lead to rapid exhaustion and have a negative impact on their performance. Another challenge is dealing with time pressure and stress. Highly sensitive people process information more deeply, which means they often take longer to make decisions or complete tasks. In stressful or highly performance-oriented jobs, this can lead to frustration if they feel like they can't keep up. The pressure to work quickly or to complete many tasks in a short period of time often goes against the way highly sensitive people want to approach their work, namely, thoroughly, thoughtfully and creatively. Emotional tension in the workplace can also be stressful for highly sensitive people, because they are acutely aware of the emotions and moods of their colleagues. They are more sensitive to conflict or negative moods than others. This can cause them to feel emotionally overloaded, especially if they are in a work environment characterized by competition, criticism, or a negative atmosphere. This emotional overstimulation can affect their ability to focus on their tasks and do their work efficiently. Yet despite these challenges, highly sensitive people can be successful in their careers if they recognize and utilize their strengths. Their ability to gain deeper insights, pay attention to details, and recognize complex connections can make them valuable employees in many professions. They often have strong creativity and problem-solving skills that help them find innovative solutions. Their empathy and compassion make them excellent team members and leaders, able to respond to the needs and emotions of their colleagues and create a supportive and collaborative work environment. An important aspect of overcoming professional challenges is creating structures that help highly sensitive people organize their work in a way that suits their sensitivity. This may mean setting clear periods for uninterrupted work, taking regular breaks, or finding a quiet place to work. It is equally important that they learn to set priorities and focus on the tasks that are most important to them, rather than being overwhelmed by too many simultaneous demands. With the right strategies and the right environment, highly sensitive people can use their sensitivity as a strength to be not only successful in their careers, but also fulfilled. Recognizing strengths in the workplace. Highly sensitive people have a variety of strengths that can make them successful in their careers if they learn how to use these skills in a targeted manner. One of the greatest strengths of highly sensitive people is their attention to detail and powers of observation. Highly sensitive people often notice subtleties that others miss, whether in a project, an interpersonal interaction, or the environment. This ability to pay attention to detail can benefit them in careers that require precision and accuracy, such as design, science, research, or healthcare. Another important talent of highly sensitive people is their strong empathy. Their ability to recognize the feelings and needs of others makes them excellent team members, able to promote a positive and supportive work environment. In professions that have a strong interpersonal component, such as counseling, social work, education or therapy, highly sensitive people can be particularly successful. Their empathy enables them to respond to the emotional and social needs of their clients or colleagues while creating an atmosphere of trust. In addition, highly sensitive people often have a high level of creativity and innovation. Because they perceive the world in a deeper and more complex way, they are able to develop original ideas and look at complex problems from new perspectives. In creative professions such as art, music, literature or marketing, highly sensitive people can use their sensitivity as a source of inspiration. Their ability to translate emotions and experiences into creative forms of expression can lead to extraordinary professional success. Intuition is another strength of highly sensitive people that can help them in their careers. They often have strong gut instincts and can recognize subtle patterns and connections before they become obvious. This intuitive wisdom can be very valuable in decision-making processes or in situations that require quick action. Highly sensitive people can use this intuition to make better decisions and fulfill their professional duties in a way that is both effective and consistent with their own values. Deep reflection and analysis are also strong skills of highly sensitive people. They tend to think through events and information more thoroughly than others. This ability for deep reflection can make them strong analysts and planners, able to develop comprehensive and thoughtful solutions to complex problems. In jobs that require deep analysis and strategic thinking, such as management, research, or project management, highly sensitive people can make full use of their strength in reflection. The emotional intelligence of highly sensitive people also helps them excel in careers that require leadership and people skills. Their ability to understand and respond to team dynamics makes them natural leaders who pay attention not only to the performance but also to the well-being of their employees. By recognizing and using their strengths in their careers, highly sensitive people can not only do their work successfully, but also do it in a way that is consistent with their sensitivity and brings them satisfaction and fulfillment. Teamwork and leadership roles. As a highly sensitive person, highly sensitive people often bring a unique perspective and valuable skills to teamwork and leadership roles that can positively impact the work climate and team dynamics. Their strong empathy and emotional intelligence enable them to build deeper connections with their teammates and create an atmosphere of collaboration and trust. However, there can also be challenges, especially when it comes to dealing with the intense emotions and stimuli that can arise in a group environment. In teamwork, Highly sensitive people excel in their ability to respond to the needs and feelings of their colleagues. They often sense early on when there is tension or misunderstanding and can help resolve conflicts before they escalate. Their keen observation skills allow them to notice details that others may miss, and they often bring creative and thoughtful solutions to the group. Their ability to actively listen and empathize with their team members' perspectives makes them valuable team members, promoting collaboration and cohesion within the group. However, one of the challenges of working in a team can be that highly sensitive people tend to feel overwhelmed by the emotions of their colleagues. Because they are highly sensitive to the moods and energies of others, they can become emotionally drained when the atmosphere in the team is tense or stressful. It is important that highly sensitive people learn to protect their own emotional boundaries and regularly take time for rest and retreat to keep themselves from becoming overstimulated. In leadership roles, highly sensitive people can make the most of their strengths in empathy and intuitive understanding. Their ability to recognize and respond to the emotional needs of their employees makes them empathetic and compassionate leaders. Highly sensitive leaders often have a keen sense of what motivates or stresses their employees and can act accordingly to promote well-being in the team. They often create a work environment based on respect, trust and mutual support. This ability to create a positive atmosphere is particularly valuable in jobs where interpersonal interaction plays a central role. Another advantage of highly sensitive leaders is their deep reflection. They tend to think through decisions thoroughly, taking into account both the facts and the emotional and interpersonal aspects of a situation. This holistic approach allows them to make well-considered and thoughtful decisions that consider not only short-term results but also long-term consequences. However, a challenge for highly sensitive managers can be dealing with conflict and high levels of stress. Because they are highly attuned to the emotional vibrations in their team, it can be difficult for them to deal with difficult conversations or conflict situations without becoming emotionally overloaded. Highly sensitive people must therefore learn to handle conflicts professionally and objectively without getting too emotionally involved. This requires a high level of self-awareness and the ability to maintain emotional distance when necessary. Another important aspect is setting boundaries. Highly sensitive leaders can sometimes have difficulty setting their own boundaries clearly, especially if they feel a strong sense of responsibility for the well-being of their team. It is important that they learn not to neglect their own self-care and to schedule times for retreat and recovery. By taking good care of themselves, they can also be better for their team in the long term and act as an authentic and effective leader. Communication also plays a central role in managing highly sensitive people. Due to their heightened awareness, they are often able to anticipate the needs of their employees and communicate in subtle ways, contributing to a positive work culture. They can offer a listening ear to their employees' worries and concerns while encouraging clear, respectful communication. By creating an environment where employees feel heard and understood, they increase team satisfaction and productivity. In summary, highly sensitive people can bring outstanding skills to teamwork and leadership roles when they recognize their strengths and use conscious strategies to consider their own needs. Their empathy, deep understanding of interpersonal dynamics, and ability to find creative solutions make them valuable team members and leaders. By setting boundaries and mindfully managing their own emotions, they can act successfully in these roles without feeling overwhelmed. Strategies against overwhelm at work. Highly sensitive people are often prone to being overwhelmed at work, especially in hectic, noisy or emotionally stressful environments. In order to remain healthy and productive in the long term, it is important that highly sensitive people develop targeted strategies to better deal with the challenges of everyday work. These strategies help them to use their sensitivity as a strength while avoiding overload. One of the most effective strategies to combat being overwhelmed is to create structures and routines. Highly sensitive people benefit from clearly structuring their workday and setting fixed times for certain tasks. This helps them to concentrate better on their work and reduce the feeling of being overwhelmed that often arises when they try to do too many things at once. By clearly planning their tasks, they can also ensure that they take regular breaks to recover and recharge their energy. Time management plays a key role here. Highly sensitive people should make sure to create realistic schedules and not put too much pressure on themselves. They tend to be intensely involved in their tasks, which can require more time. Therefore, it is important that they give themselves enough space to work thoroughly and not let themselves be driven by external expectations or excessive deadlines. Another important strategy is setting and communicating boundaries. Highly sensitive people should be aware of how much they can accomplish without overburdening themselves. This means that they must learn to say no when additional tasks or demands exceed their limits. They should communicate openly with their superiors and colleagues when they feel that their workload is becoming too great. By respecting their own boundaries and communicating them clearly, they can prevent overwhelm while maintaining their performance. Creating a supportive work environment is also an important strategy. Highly sensitive people should, where possible, design their workspace to meet their needs. This might mean finding a quiet work area, using headphones to block out noise, or taking regular short breaks to recover from sensory overload. A workspace that offers opportunities for retreat and is free from excessive distractions will help highly sensitive people to cope better with their work. Regular breaks and recovery phases are essential for highly sensitive people. Since their nervous system is overstimulated more quickly, they need more time to regenerate than others. Short, regular breaks in their daily work routine, during which they withdraw, relax or simply get some fresh air, help them to keep their energy at a balanced level. Longer recovery phases, for example after a particularly intensive day at work or a stressful week, are also important to avoid overexertion in the long term. Mindfulness techniques and stress management can help highly sensitive people to better deal with stress in the workplace. Meditation, breathing exercises or short mindfulness exercises during the workday can calm the nervous system and help reduce stress levels. These techniques promote inner balance and help highly sensitive people to remain calm and focused even in stressful situations. Finally, it is important that highly sensitive people seek social support. Talking to colleagues, friends or mentors who understand their challenges can help them to better deal with stress and overwhelm. This support not only offers emotional relief, but also practical advice and solutions on how to better manage their daily work life. With the right strategies, highly sensitive people can learn to organize their work efficiently and use their sensitivity as a strength. Through self-care, clear communication and conscious planning, they can avoid being overwhelmed and be successful and fulfilled in their careers in the long term. Self-acceptance and personality development. For highly sensitive people, Self-acceptance and personality development are central themes on the path to a fulfilled and balanced life. Highly sensitive people often grow up in a world that does not always understand or value their sensitivity. This can lead to them perceiving their own nature as a weakness and having difficulty fully accepting themselves. But high sensitivity is a valuable part of the personality that, if fully accepted, can contribute to a meaningful and authentic life. The process of self-acceptance and consciously working on your own personality development are crucial to achieving inner peace and growth as a highly sensitive person. Self-acceptance means fully accepting yourself with all your facets and feelings. For highly sensitive people, this can be challenging, as they often feel like they are different or do not conform to societal expectations. Perhaps they have experienced criticism in the past or felt like they were overly sensitive, which has led to an internal conflict between their true self and external demands. The first step to self-acceptance is to see this sensitivity not as a flaw, but as an essential and valuable part of their identity. The process of personal development often begins with highly sensitive people consciously dealing with their sensitivity and learning to understand it. This includes the realization that high sensitivity is not a weakness, but a special gift that allows them to experience the world in a deeper and more intense way. Over time, highly sensitive people learn to recognize and use their sensitivity as a strength, be it in their interpersonal relationships, in their job or in their creative development. High sensitivity as part of your identity also means taking your own needs and boundaries seriously. Highly sensitive people often need to break free from societal pressure to always be strong, insensitive or extroverted. It is important that they give themselves permission to embrace their own way of being and to prioritize their own needs, whether through regular breaks, quiet times or setting boundaries in interpersonal relationships. This acceptance creates space for self-compassion and enables highly sensitive people to treat themselves lovingly and shape their lives according to their own needs. The path to self-acceptance often involves conscious reflection and self-care. Highly sensitive people should regularly take time to reflect on their feelings and experiences. This process of reflection helps them to understand themselves better and find out what they really need to be balanced and happy. They can use techniques such as writing a diary, talking to a coach or therapist, or mindfulness exercises to delve deeper into their inner world and get to know themselves better. High sensitivity as part of identity. High sensitivity is more than just a personality trait. It is an integral part of many people's identities. For highly sensitive people, this means that their perception, their way of feeling and thinking, is deeply rooted in their identity. Awareness that high sensitivity is not something that needs to be fixed but an essential part of who they are is an important step on the path to self-acceptance and personal growth. Highly sensitive people experience the world in a very detailed and intense way. Their sensitivity influences how they build relationships, how they organize their work and how they react to their environment. The realization that high sensitivity is an integral part of their identity helps highly sensitive people to no longer fight against their natural disposition, but to accept it as part of their uniqueness. This acceptance enables them to live more authentically and to use their sensitivity as a source of strength instead of perceiving it as a burden. Integrating high sensitivity into one's life requires that highly sensitive people allow themselves to clearly recognize their needs and incorporate them into their daily lives. This could mean consciously creating spaces for retreat, being more mindful of their energy, or choosing jobs and hobbies that support their sensitivity. Highly sensitive people who recognize their sensitivity as part of their identity can shape their lives in a way that is in harmony with their inner nature. Another important aspect of high sensitivity as part of identity is self-esteem. Highly sensitive people need to learn to recognize and value their own worth, regardless of how they compare to society's often harsher, competitive standards. They need to recognize that their way of being, gentler, more reflective and empathetic, is just as valuable as that of the people around them. This recognition builds their self-confidence and allows them to move in the world more confidently and self-assuredly. The path to self-acceptance. The path to self-acceptance is often a long, profound process for highly sensitive people. Many of them grow up in a society that does not always value or understand sensitivity, which can lead them to perceive their own sensitivity as a weakness or to feel wrong. But the path to self-acceptance begins with the realization that high sensitivity is a valuable part of their personality that should be accepted and valued. An important step on this path is self-compassion. Highly sensitive people must learn to look at themselves with the same kind and understanding eyes that they see others with. This means supporting themselves in moments of being overwhelmed or doubtful, rather than criticizing or judging themselves. Self-compassion helps them to be more patient and gentle with themselves and to take their own needs seriously. Another important aspect of self-acceptance is letting go of societal expectations. Highly sensitive people often feel pressured to conform to general expectations, whether at work, in social relationships or in dealing with stress. The path to self-acceptance requires them to question and let go of these expectations. It's about focusing on what is best for themselves rather than being guided by external standards. Self-acceptance also means facing your own emotions and acknowledging them. Highly sensitive people often experience emotions more intensely than others. Instead of suppressing these feelings or seeing them as a weakness, it is important to accept and allow them. This can be done through techniques such as mindfulness, meditation, or keeping a diary in which you express and reflect on your feelings. The path to self-acceptance also requires patience. Self-acceptance is a process that takes time and practice. Highly sensitive people should allow themselves to walk this path at their own pace and celebrate small steps forward. Over time, self-acceptance will become a permanent part of their lives, and they will be able to recognize their sensitivity as the valuable part of their identity that makes them the empathetic, creative, and intuitive people they are. Personal growth through mindfulness and meditation. Mindfulness and meditation are powerful tools for highly sensitive people to promote personal growth and find inner peace. These practices allow highly sensitive people to channel their intense awareness and sensitivity in a positive way while strengthening their mental and emotional health. Through regular mindfulness and meditation, highly sensitive people can learn to better cope with sensory overload and emotional overstimulation and establish a deeper connection with themselves. Mindfulness is the practice of being present in the present moment and noticing one's thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations without judgment. For highly sensitive people who tend to dwell on thoughts and feelings, mindfulness can help calm the mind and reconnect with the here and now. Mindfulness exercises such as mindful breathing, mindful walking, or focusing on sensory sensations, such as the smell of flowers or the feeling of the wind on the skin, help highly sensitive people detach from overwhelming thoughts and emotions. Through regular mindfulness exercises, highly sensitive people can learn to better observe their thoughts and emotions instead of being overwhelmed by them. When they remain mindful in the present moment, they have the opportunity to consciously control their reactions to stimuli and not automatically get carried away by them. This is particularly valuable in stressful situations or in moments of emotional overstimulation. Through mindfulness, highly sensitive people gain the ability to remain calm and better regulate their feelings. Another benefit of mindfulness for highly sensitive people is that it helps them to understand themselves better. Mindfulness promotes self-reflection and awareness of one's own needs and limits. When highly sensitive people are mindful on a regular basis, they develop a deeper understanding of what stresses them in everyday life and what is good for them. They become better at recognizing their limits and giving themselves the necessary rest and relaxation. This strengthens self-acceptance, and highly sensitive people can better integrate their sensitivity into their lives. Meditation is another valuable practice that helps highly sensitive people find their inner balance and promote personal growth. Meditation provides a space of silence and calm where highly sensitive people can quiet their thoughts and connect with their inner self. Regular meditation practice can help reduce stress, calm the nervous system, and promote emotional stability. For highly sensitive people who often feel overwhelmed by the outside world, meditation can be a safe retreat that helps them center themselves and recharge their energy. Breathing meditation, which focuses attention on the breath, is especially helpful for calming the mind and slowing down thoughts. This type of meditation teaches highly sensitive people to focus on their breath as an anchor, allowing thoughts and emotions to pass by without being consumed by them. Guided meditations are also a good option for highly sensitive people who often feel overwhelmed by their own thoughts. Guided meditations draw attention to specific images, thoughts or feelings and help to focus the mind. They provide a structured framework that allows highly sensitive people to focus on something positive and calming. These guided meditations can be particularly helpful in finding inner peace and clarity during stressful times. Loving kindness meditation, also known as metta meditation, is another form of meditation that can be particularly beneficial for highly sensitive people. This practice focuses on sending loving thoughts and compassion to yourself and others. Highly sensitive people who often struggle with self-doubt or excessive self-criticism can learn to treat themselves more kindly and compassionately through this meditation practice. Loving kindness meditation helps to break negative thought patterns and promote a positive inner attitude. Another benefit of meditation is strengthening inner resilience. Highly sensitive people are often very receptive to the energies and emotions of their environment. Meditation helps them to develop a strong inner foundation that allows them to remain stable and calm even in difficult situations. Through regular meditation, highly sensitive people learn to be less influenced by external circumstances and to trust more in their inner strength. For many highly sensitive people, meditation becomes an integral part of their self-care and daily routine. It is a practice that supports them in regularly connecting with themselves, exploring their inner world and focusing on what is essential. By combining mindfulness and meditation, highly sensitive people can promote their personal growth, strengthen their self-acceptance and find a deeper inner peace. Overall, mindfulness and meditation help highly sensitive people to live more consciously, calmly and balanced. These practices enable them to use their sensitivity as a strength while also better dealing with the challenges that arise from their more intense perception. With mindfulness and meditation, highly sensitive people can not only deepen their self-acceptance, but also sustainably strengthen their ability to survive in an often hectic and overwhelming world. Creativity and spirituality. Doors to the inner world. For highly sensitive people, creativity and spirituality offer important access to the inner world. Creativity allows them to process their deep feelings and perceptions in the form of art, music, writing or other artistic forms of expression. Through creative work, they can express their emotions and impressions while finding peace and balance. These processes help them to understand and organize their inner world. Spirituality offers highly sensitive people another way to connect with something greater than themselves. They often seek deep, spiritual experiences that give them support and meaning. Through spirituality, highly sensitive people can find a sense of inner balance and connection that helps them integrate their sensitivity in an often hectic world. Both creativity and spirituality enable them to explore and nourish deeper dimensions of their being. High sensitivity and artistic expression. Highly sensitive people tend to perceive the world more intensely and in a more differentiated way, which often draws them to creative forms of expression. They see art as a way to channel and express their emotions and thoughts that would otherwise be difficult to put into words. Whether through painting, writing, music or dance, creative activities offer highly sensitive people a healing and liberating form of self-expression. Because they intensely perceive the subtleties of their surroundings and their inner world, their works can often take on a special depth and meaning. Art gives them the opportunity to transform their feelings and make them accessible to other people. At the same time, the artistic process offers space for reflection and inner balance by putting highly sensitive people into a state of flow in which they can block out their surroundings and concentrate entirely on their creative work. Spirituality as a source of strength. For highly sensitive people, spirituality is often a significant source of inner strength. Because they are deeply connected to their inner world and the energies around them, they often seek out spiritual practices that help them ground themselves and find a sense of inner stability. Meditation, prayer, or other spiritual rituals can support highly sensitive people to stay centered and feel connected to something larger than themselves. These spiritual practices not only offer them comfort and encouragement during difficult times, but also help them understand their sensitivity as part of a larger, cosmic plan. Through spirituality, highly sensitive people can strengthen their inner resources and deepen their ability to deal with life's challenges. The connection to nature and its healing effects. Nature has a deeply healing effect on highly sensitive people. It offers a space of silence and relaxation, far away from the overstimulation of modern life. In nature, highly sensitive people find peace, clarity and a deep connection with the earth and the natural cycles of life. Walking in the forest, listening to the wind or observing animals can help highly sensitive people to reconnect with themselves and regenerate their energies. The harmonious rhythms of nature have a calming effect on their nervous system and offer a welcome break from the constant demands of the outside world. For many highly sensitive people, nature becomes a sacred retreat that offers not only physical relaxation but also spiritual renewal and inner peace. Overcoming social perception and prejudice. Highly sensitive people often face the challenge of overcoming societal prejudices and misconceptions about their sensitivity. In a world that often values speed, strength and assertiveness, high sensitivity can be misunderstood as weakness or oversensitivity. This often leads to highly sensitive people feeling wrong or inadequate, especially when their needs for rest and reflection are not taken seriously. To overcome these societal prejudices, it is important to promote education and awareness about high sensitivity. It is about making it clear that high sensitivity is not a sign of weakness, but a form of deep perception and empathy that can make valuable contributions to interpersonal relationships and societal processes. By educating and sharing personal experiences, highly sensitive people can help create a more respectful and understanding society in which sensitivity is recognized as a strength. Misconceptions about high sensitivity. Many misconceptions about high sensitivity arise from ignorance or a lack of understanding of what it means to be highly sensitive. Highly sensitive people are often dismissed as oversensitive, weak or too emotional. These prejudices are based on the assumption that sensitivity is a sign of instability, while in reality high sensitivity is a normal, innate trait that occurs in about 15–20% of the population. Another common misconception is that high sensitivity is only associated with negative aspects such as being overwhelmed and withdrawing, while the positive aspects, such as increased empathy, creativity and the pursuit of harmony, are often overlooked. Highly sensitive people can overcome these misconceptions by understanding themselves better and explaining what high sensitivity really means in order to raise awareness in their environment. High sensitivity represented in society. Highly sensitive people often feel the need to represent their sensitivity in society in a way that values both their own needs and societal diversity. This means that they must learn to speak openly about their sensitivity and defend it as a valuable part of their personality. This may mean communicating their needs clearly in social or professional settings, whether by requesting breaks, creating quiet working conditions, or being aware of the need for emotional exchange. Highly sensitive people can show by example that sensitivity is a valuable trait that contributes to a deeper connection between people and a fairer, more compassionate social interaction. By representing their sensitivity in society, they also help others to become aware of their own feelings and to see their sensitivity as a strength. Courage to be authentic. Appear self-confident. It is especially important for highly sensitive people to appear authentic and self-confident, even in a world that often favors other personality traits. Having the courage to be authentic means that they do not have to hide or adapt their sensitivity to conform to social norms. Instead, they should accept their idiosyncrasies and needs as an integral part of their identity and communicate them clearly. Being self-confident also means standing up for yourself when your sensitivity is questioned or misunderstood. It takes courage to speak your own truth in difficult situations and to remain true to your own needs, even if this is not always met with understanding. When highly sensitive people appear authentic and self-confident, they create space for more acceptance and respect for all types of human perception and feeling. Tips and techniques for everyday life. Highly sensitive people often face the challenge of managing their daily tasks without being overwhelmed by sensory overload and emotional exhaustion. However, there are many practical tips and techniques that can help them to make everyday life more balanced and efficient. A first step is to integrate mindfulness into everyday life. By consciously focusing on the present moment and sharpening their senses, highly sensitive people can learn to perceive and process stimuli in a more controlled way. Regular short mindfulness exercises, such as mindful breathing or consciously perceiving sounds or smells, help to calm the nervous system and prevent overstimulation. Structure and planning are also very important for highly sensitive people. A well-organized daily routine that includes fixed times for work, breaks and relaxation can help them use their energy more efficiently. Highly sensitive people should try to prioritize tasks and avoid multitasking in order to focus on the essentials and reduce overwhelm. Self-care is another key aspect that should be integrated into everyday life. Regular breaks, healthy eating, sufficient sleep and exercise are important factors that help maintain emotional and physical balance. Highly sensitive people should also consciously plan times of rest and retreat to recharge their batteries. By integrating these techniques and tips into their daily routine, highly sensitive people can improve their quality of life and better adapt to the challenges of daily life. Effective relaxation techniques for highly sensitive people. Highly sensitive people need effective relaxation techniques to manage their sensory overload and calm their nervous system. One of the best methods for relaxation is meditation. Through regular meditation, highly sensitive people can learn to calm their minds and focus their perception on what is essential. Techniques such as mindfulness meditation or progressive muscle relaxation help to release tension and clear the mind. These methods promote deep relaxation and help to reduce stress and restore emotional balance. Breathing techniques are also very effective in reducing stress and overstimulation. A simple but effective method is deep abdominal breathing, which involves slowly inhaling through the nose, holding the breath for a few seconds, and then slowly exhaling through the mouth. This technique can be used quickly in stressful situations to calm the nervous system and achieve instant relaxation. Gentle forms of exercise such as yoga or tai chi are also particularly helpful for highly sensitive people. These exercises connect the body and mind and promote not only physical relaxation but also emotional balance. They help to relieve tension, promote concentration and increase general well-being. Finally, highly sensitive people should also regularly schedule rest periods in nature. The calming effect of nature supports the relaxation process and helps to restore the connection to one's own inner peace. Walks in the forest or time by the water offer deep regeneration for the body and mind and are a powerful way to recover from daily stressors. Routines to strengthen emotional resilience. It is important for highly sensitive people to develop routines to strengthen their emotional resilience in order to better cope with daily challenges. One of the best ways to do this is to establish a morning self-care routine. The day should begin with activities that calm the nervous system and stabilize emotions, such as a short meditation, breathing exercises, or gentle exercise such as yoga. This practice helps to start the day with a balanced and positive attitude. Practicing gratitude is another powerful way to build emotional resilience. Highly sensitive people should take time each day to reflect on things they are grateful for and record them in a journal. This simple act helps shift focus from negative to positive aspects of life and increases overall well-being. It promotes an optimistic attitude and strengthens emotional stability, even in stressful times. Setting boundaries is also a key part of emotional resilience. Highly sensitive people need to learn to recognize their own emotional and physical boundaries and communicate these clearly. By regularly saying no when they reach their breaking point and allowing themselves to take breaks, they can build their resilience to stress and emotional overload. Finally, highly sensitive people should integrate social support into their routines. Regular exchanges with trusted friends, family or colleagues help to share emotional challenges and receive support. Through stable social connections, highly sensitive people feel less alone with their feelings and are strengthened in dealing with emotional stress. Practical exercises for self-reflection and self-empowerment. Self-reflection and self-empowerment are important tools for highly sensitive people to better understand themselves and promote their inner stability. One of the most effective techniques is writing a diary. Highly sensitive people can record their thoughts and feelings in a diary to gain clarity about their inner processes. This enables them to recognize patterns in their behavior and reactions and to work on them in a targeted manner. Regular writing not only promotes understanding of one's own emotions, but also helps to find solutions to challenges. Affirmations are another helpful exercise for self-empowerment. Highly sensitive people can use positive affirmations to boost their self-confidence and mentally prepare themselves for the challenges of everyday life. By repeating phrases like "I am strong and able to overcome my challenges" or "I accept and appreciate my sensitivity every day," they can positively change their self-image and develop more confidence in their abilities. Self-compassion exercises are also valuable for self-empowerment. These exercises help highly sensitive people to develop a more loving and compassionate attitude towards themselves. They can learn to comfort themselves in difficult moments and support themselves emotionally through guided meditations or simple breathing exercises. These practices not only promote personal growth but also strengthen resilience in the face of life's challenges. Rights and ownership notice. This audiobook is published and distributed by Testberichtdienste LLC. All copyrights, publishing rights, distribution rights, audio rights, and related intellectual property rights for this work have been lawfully and exclusively acquired by Testberichtdienste LLC. Testberichtdienste LLC is the sole and unrestricted rights holder of this audiobook, including the right to reproduce, distribute, publish, monetize, and publicly perform the content on digital platforms such as YouTube. The original manuscript files, source documents, and contractual acquisition records serve as proof of lawful ownership. The original author and/or their authorized representative, Renovatio LLC, has transferred all relevant rights to Testberichtdienste LLC in accordance with applicable copyright and publishing law. This ownership applies to all current and future uses of this work, including audio, video, and digital publications. Effective date of rights ownership: the 1st of February 2026. Any unauthorized use, reproduction, re-upload, redistribution, or claiming of this content is strictly prohibited. Copyright Testberichtdienste LLC. All rights reserved.